Arsenal's title dream might come down to one brutal decision. Does Mikel Arteta stick with the €63.5 million wrecking ball Viktor Gyökeres?
Stole a march on his defender. Gyokeres coming inside, he shoots and he scores!
Who is built for chaos, power, and goals when the pressure hits? Or does he trust the returning technical wizard, Gabriel Jesus?
He locates Gabriel Jesus. Is this the grand finale? It still might be. It is!
The man who makes Arsenal flow, but just spent 332 days on the sidelines. One gives you dominance, the other gives you control.
I actually think it's going to be tough for Gyokeres to be first choice Arsenal striker, especially when Gabriel Jesus gets up to speed, who I actually think is a better player than Gyokeres. I think Gyokeres would maybe score more goals over the season, but in terms of everything you'd want from a centre forward, I think Jesus is probably a better player.
But here's the uncomfortable truth. Some analysts say Gyokeres looks like a fish out of water in tight build-ups.
You know, he looks a little bit like a fish out of water in this Arsenal side. He looks like the wrong piece in the jigsaw.
And Jesus? He's only averaging 28 minutes a game since returning. So, the real question isn't just who's better, it's this. Is the mobility gap costing Arsenal control or costing them goals? And with a Premier League title on the line, who should lead the line? Why would a manager who obsesses over total control spend €63.5 million on a player who does the exact opposite of his current strikers? To answer that, we need to look at the fundamental design flaw Arteta tried to fix last summer. Arsenal had plenty of ball, but their possession sometimes turned into harmless passing. They needed a different way to hurt teams when the passing lanes closed up. Viktor Gyökeres wasn't signed to play nice, he was signed because the attack needed a direct, physical solution.
They've spent a lot of money on Viktor Gyökeres in the hope that he's going to fill that gap for them and be the man to take them onwards to the title.
The Swede brings a sledgehammer profile to the Emirates. When you watch his 1,588 minutes of action, you don't see a player trying to knit the play together nicely. You see a striker running in straight lines and bullying defenders. His game is defined by raw dominance. He uses explosive pace and physical power to get behind defenses, acting as a focal point who stretches play and wins physical duels.
Gyokeres is more of an old-fashioned striker that needs service, needs good balls into the box from wide positions.
This is a player who terrifies centre-backs, not with his passing, but with his relentless running directly at the goal. Now, let's compare that to Gabriel Jesus. If Gyokeres is the heavy tool for demolition, Jesus is the scalpel. He operates in those tight pockets of space that exist between the defenders and the midfielders. He connects the midfield to the attack with technical dribbling and intricate 1-2s. He isn't just standing up top waiting for a cross, he is a connector player who drops deep, links play, and presses like a madman to win the ball back. He uses elite ball retention to help teammates like Saka and Odegaard find openings.
I think Jesus he's a different player altogether. He's more about movement and link-up play and little 1-2s around the box, and then he pops up now and again and he's got good feet in the box.
This creates a massive tactical split for the team. Gyokeres wants the ball in space so he can run at goal. He is direct. Jesus wants the ball at his feet to create space for others. Analysts point out that Gyokeres is a chaos agent. He thrives when the game breaks down and the structure falls apart. Jesus, however, acts as a false nine playmaker who needs order and rhythm to be effective. The tension here is that Arteta's system generally relies on control. He wants his team to dominate the game state, yet he spent a massive fortune on a player who specializes in transition. We're seeing a clash of philosophies at the number 9 spot. It's the need for a Haaland-esque volume shooter versus the desire for a technical facilitator who improves the overall structure. Gyokeres gives you presence and power. Jesus gives you the glue that holds the attacking shape together.
Jesus, he's part of the best front line Arsenal in terms of in sync and fluidity when Martinelli and Saka. So there's chemistry there.
The fundamental difference means selecting a striker isn't just swapping players on the lineup card. It changes the entire identity of how Arsenal attacks. You're either choosing to play directly into space, or you're choosing to suffocate the opponent with possession. On paper, this choice looks easy. You look at the stat sheet and you see 8 goals for Viktor Gyökeres compared to just 2 for Gabriel Jesus. 9 times out of 10, you pick the guy putting the ball in the net. But football isn't played on a spreadsheet. When we dig deeper into what analysts call the mobility gap, the decision gets much harder. We have to look at why some experts are worried about the Swedes' adaptation to the team. There is a growing narrative that Gyokeres might be a big bustling championship striker, rather than the elite forward suited for specific systems.
We have to be honest, it's almost like the word on the street before he come to the Premier League was, we're not quite sure he's at the level of a really top European club, which is what Arsenal are now, one of the best teams.
He looks powerful in open space, but reports suggests he sometimes looks like a fish out of water against low-block teams. These represent the teams that park the bus and deny him space to run. In these moments, the direct physical approach does not match the intricate passing game Arsenal usually plays. He can appear to be the wrong piece in the jigsaw. If he can't run behind, does he offer enough to the build-up?
The only thing I'd say against Gyokeres, really, with Sporting Lisbon, he's probably playing on the counter-attack a lot, in Europe especially. You think of Arsenal, they have the ball an awful lot. Now, is he going to be clever enough to make these little runs in behind?
This brings us to the team goals metric. We need to ask if Arsenal actually scores more total goals when their striker scores less. It sounds strange, but let's break it down. When Jesus plays, he doesn't stay still. His movement vacates the center of the pitch. He drifts wide or drops deep into midfield. This movement drags defenders out of position and opens massive gaps for Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli to cut inside. They often become the primary scorers because Jesus clears the runway for them to attack the box. Gyokeres plays a very different role. He stays central as a traditional focal point. This pins defenders back, which is good for gaining territory, but it can crowd the space for Arsenal's wingers. If he's standing in the middle of the box, Martinelli can't run into that same spot. The stats show a strange reality behind the playstyles. Gyokeres takes 1.5 shots per game.
When he was at his time at Sporting, he averaged maybe 3 to 4 shots per game. There he's averaging under 2 for Arsenal.
That is barely more than Jesus, who sits at 1.4 shots. Despite the massive difference in how they play, the shooting volume is nearly identical. This suggests the goal machine might be struggling to find more chances against the Premier League's tightest defenses. He isn't getting 5 or 6 shots a game, he's working with limited opportunities. The debate then shifts to the physical cost of the other option. We have to check if Jesus' 332-day injury absence has permanently sapped the pressing intensity that used to define him. Can he still hunt down defenders for 90 minutes? The stats reveal a clear divide between the two. Gyokeres provides the individual goals everyone sees, but Jesus might still be the key to unlocking the team's overall attacking potential. The Premier League title often comes down to just 3 or 4 games. A team can beat the bottom half of the table all season, but the trophy? That's usually won or lost against elite opposition, like Man City or Liverpool. In these high-pressure moments, managers rarely experiment with new ideas. They usually revert to what they trust most. We have to look ahead at one of the biggest fixtures on the calendar, the EFL Cup Final, and ask who starts when Arsenal plays City. The choice tells us exactly how Arteta plans to approach one of the season's most defining moments. He has to decide between the man who can hold the ball under extreme pressure or the man who creates a lethal threat on the counter-attack.
They've got so many different answers, and I think when you've got Marino, you've got Havertz coming back, and you've got Gabriel Jesus, who's now fit, who's been very good for Arsenal. Now the manager does have, many decisions and many options in his camp, which is good.
History warns us about Arsenal's previous title bids. They often fell short because they lacked a plan B when their primary passing game got stifled by top-tier defenses. When the midfield couldn't play through the lines, they had nowhere to go. Gyokeres offers that plan B immediately. He gives the goalkeeper and defenders a physical outlet. If the opposition press is too intense, they can hit the ball long to him. He uses his strength to hold off centre-backs and turn a desperate clearance into a dangerous attack. This forces opponents to drop deeper to account for his speed, which creates space in the middle of the field that Arsenal didn't have in past seasons. However, Gabriel Jesus offers something equally valuable for these specific matches. He brings the defensive work rate and pressing intelligence that Arteta demands to suffocate opponents. Against a team like Man City, if you lose the ball cheaply, you might not see it again for 5 minutes. Jesus understands the pressing triggers perfectly. He harasses the defenders and cuts off passing angles that a more traditional striker might miss. The beautiful problem is actually a massive gamble. If you play Gyokeres, you risk losing control of the midfield battle, because he doesn't drop deep to help the numbers game. If you play Jesus, you gain control, but risk lacking that killer instinct inside the box when a chance finally arrives. Recent form hints that Jesus is regaining his sharpness just in time for the run-in, which complicates the decision further. He looks quicker and more confident on the turn. We know that if the goal is to beat Man City, you need to be perfect in possession. You cannot afford turnovers in your own half. This reality tilts the scale away from the chaotic nature of Gyokeres, who thrives on high-risk plays. Jesus keeps the ball moving and helps the team keep their shape. For the biggest games of the 2025-26 season, the evidence points to a specific hierarchy. Jesus starts when control is the priority. He tires out the defenders and keeps the team structure solid during the tactical chess match. Then, as the game opens up in the last 40 minutes, Gyokeres becomes the ultimate weapon off the bench. He enters against tired legs to wreak havoc with his pace. For example, in the recent fixture against Sunderland on February 7th, 2026, Jesus was substituted on the 60th minute mark for Viktor Gyökeres, and immediately, Gyokeres entered the game and he scored on the 66th minute. He was a problem for the Sunderland defenders and ended up finishing the game with a brace. This rotation focuses on winning the game over 90 minutes, rather than just picking the best individual scorer for the first whistle. Mikel Arteta doesn't have a depth problem, he actually has 2 separate teams depending on the striker that starts the game. The season proves that while Gyokeres brings the direct goals fans cried out for, Jesus brings the control the system desperately needs. To win the title, Arsenal doesn't need to pick one permanent winner. They need to master the art of switching between them before the season ends. The real challenge isn't finding the perfect striker, but knowing exactly when to change the game plan.
It's going to be difficult for Gyokeres to be the only focal point, because I just think Arsenal aren't set up to just serve the striker. They've got too many good players in too many different positions.
The next trophy depends on making the right switch at the right time.